So I'm trying to design a graph can using the Animal Crossing design feature. So I'm gonna try to create a couple different designs and see how it works out. So this one is obviously a tree. I'm trying to figure out if I want to add anything else to this one. Hello.
Hey, that's a smart thing to go about doing it. I never would have thought about something like that.
Yeah, when I was playing it, I was like, this is like a perfect way to make a graph can for like a blanket or a square, something like that.
I really like that a lot. I'm like, ooh, that's really nice.
So what are you working on today?
I am working on a art piece here. I've been doing it for a while. I need to weave in some ends here at some point. It's a well, it's a air quote blanket. The reason I'm saying that is I'm looking at it more as a piece of art now at this point, not for an actual used blanket. But I was doing just the granny squares and all that, but I was getting really annoyed with how long this was taking and how many squares I was doing. So
Oh.
then I went and just made the squares twice as big, so it's going a lot quicker now. And I'm just looking at all these ends I need to weave in. And then there's like all these different little odd and end spots that are all weird, but I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get it done and over with and call it a day.
You're just like, I'm done with all this.
Because I just made a TikTok today about it. I'm like, have you ever you're working on one of those projects and it just will not get done? Like it just keeps taking so long. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just fed up with it at this point.
You're like, I just want to throw in the towel. I
Oh
get
my
so
God.
many of those projects.
Well, because I have another project that I have just setting aside blanket wise that I was like, oh, this is a good idea. But I don't know when or if ever I'll get it finished. And then I just dropped a order form and all that for some pre-orders for a little bear that I went and made. And I have one person that went on ahead and ordered that, so
Oh,
I
that's
need to
nice.
I need to go and get working on that along with I have to go to the post office to see if I can try and get a general estimate on how much shipping's going to be.
Is it a big project or a little project?
I mean, it's a little one. The only thing that has me really concerned is the fact that the person that ordered it is in Canada, so I have to go and figure out what the shipping is going to be for that.
Oh,
Since,
yeah.
oh my goodness, it's just so expensive. But at the same time, like, I'm fairly sure that's probably going to be the only international order that I have to do. But
At least it's not too much to stress over. It's just one. Imagine if it was like 10.
oh, that's true. Because just the idea of having to deal with international orders and shipping just isn't really fun. I mean, I don't mind going to the post office, but I really hate having to figure out um, shipping and all that because it's always a pain in the butt to deal with.
I know when I used to create a lot of stuff for people, I was always like, am I doing the right shipping or am I putting too little? Am I putting too much?
Well, because like my thing is, I've been using poly mailers because I know that that'll make it a lot more cheaper than using a box. But for some of the ones that I've went and shipped and all that, I'm like, the poly mailer should have been the cheaper option. And I find out, oh, well, shoot, I literally could have sent that in a flat rate box and it would be so much more cheaper than doing it in a mailer. So now I'm like, well, shoot, now what do I do? Do I just go on ahead and assume a poly mailer, or what should I do now with this? And so that's why I'm like really frustrated with that part. It's not just cut and dry, straightforward and simple anymore.
That sounds like so much work.
You're telling me, I'm just like, why? This is why like pattern designing and all that is so much more easier than like actual product selling.
I know I used to do that a lot, and then I was like, it's so much work to try to do shipping, and then I used to do craft shows too. I was like, this is just too much. I'd rather just stick with creating the pattern and not worry about all that.
I mean, the only plus side is the fact that I'm doing it outside of Etsy, so I don't have to worry about Etsy like going and taking all these fees and everything. So like that's one huge massive plus side that I don't have to deal with. Because from my understanding, Etsy doesn't really do a whole lot of additional help when it comes to international shipping.
No, they don't.
That's still all up to you. So it's like, well, it's not even any kind of benefit to even use Etsy. Plus, on top of that, doing it myself, I can skip out on all those additional fees Etsy keeps throwing out on people.
True.
But at least on the plus side, I'm getting rid of quite a bit of excess yarn on this project, so that's at least one plus side.
Yeah, and at least it's getting your creative juices flowing to figure out what you want to do next.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be a blanket or anything with granny squares.
I don't do blankets at all. Like, I literally physically hate doing them. The fact that I'm doing this one really makes no sense, but I was telling a few folks earlier, like, every now and then, if I'm bored, I'll go through and maybe make a few granny squares out of like some yarn that I kind of have around. And then once I finish it, or by finish it, I mean like do 4 rows, I throw it into a bag and I have them all in there. And I'm like, well, I have these all here. I can use them for any kind of project, whether it be putting them together for something or just having them for some project that I could use in the future. And so got some of those done, but even then still I'm just like, I might end up stopping after this and weave in ends just to get those out of the way.
I hate the weaving and ends. Like it's the worst thing to do. I hate having like, especially when you're using like so many colors. Like my last corner to corner, I had like 6 different colors.
Oof.
So it's a mess.
Well, the thing that made this one so much terrible and why it was also so slow was earlier on with all these smaller squares, I was hand sewing them like all together. So got the really long thread attached to the needle, went through and sewed them all together. And it wasn't until I got to the bigger squares I was like, wait, that's dumb. So once I finished the square, I was like, oh, I'll just use the yarn that I have attached from the project. I'll just go and slip stitch the entire thing on. So that way, 1, I'm using up the yarn, and 2, I don't have to worry about hand sewing it, like it's already good to go. And I'm like, why is it that always I get a decent of the way through and then I have this brilliant idea of, oh, this is way better. And I could have saved myself so much more time this whole entire process if I would have did that.
Thank you, Kusai, for the rose. I know it's always after you start a project, that's when you realize, oh, you know, all the mistakes you created.
And I could have done this so much quicker, but I just don't know. I cut up most of the ends. Some of them I'm not even going to worry about because I'm like, no, I'm not worrying about that. They'll
You're
just
like,
be there.
I'll deal with that later.
Some of those later may never even come, and I'll just be like, oh well, it was a good run. I had a good thought behind it, but no thanks.
There's so many patterns I've started. I'm like, oh, I'll keep going, and then after a couple days, I'm like, this is not working. Or I finish it, and I'm like, I could never make this a full pattern. It's so terrible.
I completely feel that way. There was one project I did it the first time. I definitely messed it up, especially when it came to the sewing part, and I was like, no, I just don't want to do this again. Finally got back to it and finished it, but there's one. It's a nice pattern, great thought process, but it just turned out so bad, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I can't make this again. There was way too much time that went into it, and I'm not about to screw it up again.
What are your favorite things to create?
Honestly, I'd probably have to say either a beanie or granny squares, because the granny squares are easy enough to where I can go and just pop it out and kind of use whatever I want to, but it's something that I can use for literally anything. Because for a pretty long stint, I was going through and making massive granny squares and turning them into cardigans. But then I stopped doing those because I didn't like making them that big because they just take longer and longer. But beanies, I think I enjoy a lot more because it's something that I can get done in a decent amount of time, and I enjoy the way that they look.
Mm-hmm. I like making beanies too. I feel like those are easy to like crank out, make a bunch of at one time. And I think I like making like wearables, like sweaters and stuff. But those take so long that by the end I'm like, I never want to do this again.
Oh my goodness, yep. Because
Like, no.
because I'm like, the idea and thought and all that, it's just so great. But then I'm like, once the actual reality of it sets in, and I'm like, wow, I really shouldn't have been that ambitious. Like, I know what I like, I know what I don't like. Yet here I was, young and dumb, and went on ahead and did it anyway.
I know one time I was designing a blanket. I was like, oh, I have all this like extra yarn. It was a like super bulky yarn. So I was like, let me make a blanket with this. And it took me like a month to do the whole blanket and the whole pattern. And by the end of it, I didn't even like it.
Oh my goodness, that is literally the worst feeling in the world, is either making something and not liking it, or making something and something about it in some way, shape, or form just rubs you the wrong way about it. And so you're stuck there with it, and you're just like, what do I do with this? Like, I don't enjoy it. Like, looking at it doesn't make me happy, but I don't even want to sell because I'm like, it's so terrible for me personally. The idea of selling that and someone having it, like, I feel like I've done something wrong with that.
Yeah, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not gonna let anybody see this. This is gonna go into the corner of doom. Nobody's like, because you can't throw it out. You can't get rid of it because you put
Yeah,
so
because I'm
much.
like, I put so much work into that. There was this one lady, I had the, so it was actually this thing here. This here was what I was intending to make, was this dino.
Mm-hmm.
And my first attempt went absolutely horrible. Like, I went through and did it. I sewed on the appendages wrong, and I accidentally added ears to it. And Like it was off center and the ears looked weird when I put them on. I hated it so much. And I was like, what do I do with this? And I had it sitting up, and a few people were like, oh, that's a cute bear. And I'm like, no, that's actually a really ugly dinosaur. Like, no, it's not a bear. Several people said that they liked it, and I was like, all right, if you like it, I am willing to give you this item at a cheaper than normal price. Like, I just want to get rid of it. I don't like it. I want it gone. And I told people, I think it was just like $20. And I was like, folks, this is as is $20. That covers the shipping for it. Like, I just want this thing gone. And finally, I had someone that was like, yeah, I'll actually do it. I saw them send the money in Venmo, and I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm getting rid of this thing. I do not want this whatsoever. Like, take it.
You were
I was
like,
like,
yeah, God.
oh my goodness. I was so happy because I was like, literally just looking at this thing, all I can think about is how much I failed at this project and how much I just do not like it whatsoever. And so I was like, I am happy to get rid of this thing. Like, I just did not care. I was like, I do not care about really making any money at this point. I was like, I just want it gone. And I was like, I don't have it in my heart to throw it away because I did work on it. It just go, take it.
Thank you, Quisai, for the rose and the TikTok.
All right, now that I finished that square, I can sew in some ends here, and then I can begin working on get working on that bear for that international order. I really wish that international shipping and all that stuff wasn't nearly as much of a process as it needs to be.
Yeah. You can always release your blanket as like an ugly blanket pattern or something. Like a mishmash blanket pattern.
Well, because the blanket pattern, as much as like getting some of those different pieces and all that sewn on, I've already told a lot of folks like how I view it and all that, because I was like, how I view this project is it's a like I call it like a piece of humanity where each square represents a completely different person and the idea of different people. Now, some squares look similar, but they are just that. They just look kind of similar, but they are still completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever so many different people all come together, they can make something look absolutely beautiful and amazing. And so that's like the key behind it, is that um, together we're each a unique little something, but whenever we come together, whether it be like working on something or in this case a project blanket, the results are just breathtaking and really nice looking.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have yet to actually see this fully laid out, just because my apartment's not big enough for it. I don't have a space that's big enough to actually do this, but I just know that it's going to be really good.
I can't wait to see it all finished. Because I'm
Neither
sure through the process, like it's gonna look so cool.
well, because at
Because
first
the
I
way
had
you're describing it, it sounds really awesome.
because I mean I had so many different ideas and all that, and it was kind of funny because I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go and use like what I have lying around to go and finish it instead of like going out and buying stuff. And sure enough, I went on ahead and bought stuff anyway because I was like, well, I do have a few different things, but there are like some colors that I kind of want to just throw on in there because I don't have any and I want there to be more variety in it. Like, I don't have any brown, so I went and bought some brown just to use in it. And now I'm like, Well, I could use that, but I don't like that where I would end up putting it because I'm like, it could look nice there, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm really starting to hate myself for all these ends that I left undone. I'm like, why didn't I weave these in earlier?
You're like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Because I'm like, I am literally just biting myself in the butt so hard on this one right now. Because I could have just had this done and not even worried about it. Because especially with the way where instead of like fastening off the end and then weaving it in that way, like the way that I'm doing it now where I just use that end to attach it to the others, that's so much more easier because now I don't have to worry about like weaving in that end or going
Mm-hmm.
back and weaving it in. Like I've already got it good to go. uh, well, let's see here. I won't keep you any longer, but you have a absolute great and fantastic live, and thanks for letting me stop in here
Oh
for
no,
a
join
moment.
anytime.
It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'll chat later.
All right, later.
Bye-bye. Alrighty, guys. So it's already almost 10:30, so I'm gonna log off too, so I can get ready to do some more work tomorrow. So thank you all for joining the live, and I hope you guys had a lot of fun. We made 2 designs, so I'm gonna pick which one I'm gonna make into a blanket. So thank you all so much. Bye bye now.